kickers are often viewed as not football players or what have you.
I could sense that there were certain people in the building that just, no matter what I did, they were never going to like me. And I was just like, whatever. Most people, I think, realize it just is what it is. This is an important part of the game of football, arguably a top 5 most important position, to the outcome of the game.
I want to know toughest moment when it comes to being an NFL kicker. What was the toughest moment where you missed a kick, lost a game?
Oh, man. I hadn't really fully forgiven myself for that one.
Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Gridiron and Growth podcast with my boy Ryan Harris, and I am your other co-host, Bennie Fowler. Today, we have a special guest, a Super Bowl champion, a 13-year veteran of the NFL, and now an entrepreneur, speaker, coach, and consultant, Stephen Hauschka. Welcome to the show, my friend. Man, welcome to the show. It's great to be reconnected with you, man. We got a chance to meet in person. I think, I don't know, maybe was that, that had to be in 2018. We did the NFL Speakers Bureau, and we were both trying to get out of our comfort zone and really learn how to speak and speak on stage. And we had an incredible conversation. And then we reconnected in January of this year. And it's just great to see all the incredible things that you're doing. So this podcast, man, we just want to talk about your leadership journey, number one in sports, and then transitioning out of sports, and then what you're up to now. So, Steve, number one, would just love to know what it's like to be a kicker in the NFL with all of the pressure that is on you. What's it like as a kicker in the NFL, man? Talk to us about that.
Oh, man. I think it's one of the most unique positions in all of sports. You get very few chances, and you can't wait until, you make a couple kicks to feel confident, because those first couple kicks might affect the entire game. So you have to head into the game. You have to really cultivate this confidence and this belief in yourself before you even go out there on the field for the first kick. And so you have to do a lot of mental work to get in this zone where you feel like you're going to go make the kick before you even get out there. And so, name a sport where there's fewer opportunities and more pressure than a football kicker. I don't think there is. Maybe a closer in baseball, but even a closer's got a bunch of pitches. A golfer's got 70 shots. A kicker might have, they got a few kickoffs, but those don't really fully matter. So you might have 3 to 5, kicks in a game, or even a couple. So I tried to keep it steady, but the highs were like, it felt incredible. It felt like the best feeling to help your team win. And you get too much attention when you help the team win. And then when you help the team lose, unfortunately, which is a reality sometimes, you get a lot of blame there. So the highs and lows are intense, and pulling yourself out of bed after like a game when you cost the team the game is like one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do.
Let's dive into that right there. I want to know toughest moment when it comes to being an NFL kicker. What was the toughest moment where you missed a kick, lost a game, and then how did you handle that?
I guess it only happened a couple times, which is fortunate over 13 years. But jogging off, the first time it happened, I was in my second season with the Ravens, and I was out there, and Brett Favre had just gone down and scored for the Vikings and put the team up 2 points. We were got into field goal range, and they sent me out there, and I remember just feeling kind of frozen. And then Brad Childress, their head coach, called a timeout to ice me, and I don't even know. I wasn't really fully there, if that makes sense. I wasn't fully there. Kind of jogged out there, kicked the ball. It all happened so quick, and looked up and just watched it go wide left, and my heart just sank, and I was just like, oh my God, and it was I was so tough on myself. It was pretty brutal, and I just I was actually speaking about it recently, and I realized like I hadn't really fully forgiven myself for that one. And I actually, like, it was hard for me to even like Google the score of that game and like find out some more of the details because I just kind of like blocked it out. So that was an early, I guess I was like 24, 25. That was early in my career. It led me to work really hard and get a lot better at kicking. And then later in my career with the Bills, I had a kick in Cleveland that was a difficult kick at the end of the game. It was this feeling of like, I'm going to be okay. Like, even though I totally screwed that kick up, like I still love myself. And so as I jogged off the field, it was a different feeling. And it was also difficult to field all these questions from reporters about what went wrong and all this stuff. And like, you feel like crap. You guys know, you feel like crap when they grill you about all the plays that you did wrong. But in this instance, I kind of cultivated some self-love during that whole thing. So there was a glimmer of that, which helped a lot. And then the next day, it was still tough because I felt like I got steamrolled by a truck, like mentally and emotionally. I remember waking up that morning because you have to go face it in front of the whole team. The whole team's going to be, as a kicker, you don't even want to know what everyone in the building thinks about you after after something goes wrong like that. I can make assumptions that, guys lay their hearts out on the line and their bodies and everything. And so they rely on the kicker a lot, and to let the team down in that situation really, really feels bad. And I know it feels bad for other guys. And trust me, as a kicker, it feels even worse when you're on the wrong side of that.
You hate when people say, this is just your only job. Your only
Yeah,
job.
I know. It's to me, that was just like, I think deep down they understand how difficult it is. Not difficult to do it, but difficult to be 100%.
Well, even to stay warm during a game. Like, I don't know how you kickers would stay warm. You know what I mean? You put us on the sidelines for 30 minutes, man. I don't know what you're getting when we come back out. But I want to talk about two things you kind of said separately: forgiving yourself and loving yourself. And I bring that up because that was a pivotal moment in my career. My mental performance coach he said, Ryan, I want you to say about your mistakes, I want you to say to yourself, I deeply love and forgive myself. And my first response, I literally said, no, I can't do that. Because like forgiving yourself and saying like, I love myself. I love that you had that moment later on in your career. But what was your process to say, I deeply love and forgive myself to keep moving forward?
It was actually part of my mental preparation for games. I did this tapping technique where it's called emotional freedom technique. You're aware of it?
Yeah. Shout out to Dr. Robert Rudlick. He was my guy who taught me that. Yeah.
Okay. It's cool. So you're aware of it too. So for those that aren't aware of it, it's called tapping, emotional freedom technique. And basically you do these self-affirmation statements while you're tapping on these different acupressure points. Like one is right here, one is right here and here and here. And so you might go, I would use it to prepare for games. So if I was concerned about like the wind or the weather, or, I had a poor game there before or something like that, it would just kind of help me release any concerns I had about the game coming up. And I would also use it to build up my confidence. So I'd say things like, I can't wait to get out on the field today because I love myself, I believe in myself, and I trust myself. I don't know for what reason, but when the pressure was on, I kicked even better. In the playoffs, I somehow made 24 of my 25 playoff kicks, and the only miss was from 55 yards into the wind. And so
you could be mad at the offense for that 55-yarder. Like, hey, come on, guys, Yeah.
So I was just dialed on that, and I don't know, that technique really helped me, and a lot of it was really forgiving yourself for the current concerns that I had, and just acknowledging them, because I think we all have these concerns in our lives, and and in sports, and no matter how small it is, how large it is, it takes the weight out of them to acknowledge them, and just to love yourself for having those concerns.
I want to go back in your story because you're Super Bowl champion, a kicker who's overcome missing kicks and making kicks, and clearly successful now as you've transitioned out of your career. But your career as a kicker started from getting cut from Middlebury soccer. Talk to us about that experience. How did you turn what must have been the most tragic occurrence in your life at that time to the greatest opportunity you ever stepped into?
So I wasn't actually cut, but it was like I was cut because I got there on campus thinking as a freshman, I thought I was going to be playing with the varsity team, and I got there and they stashed me on the JV team, which was across campus, like totally separate programs. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall that I wasn't a recruit. The recruits were heavily favored. So I saw the writing on the wall. I played the JV soccer team that year, had a blast, but it was not what I was expecting. And so the next, that off season, I went and kicked some footballs, and my roommate was a football player. And I was actually closer with the football players there at Middlebury. And I thought, hey, I've always wanted to kick a football. Why don't I come out for the football team and try that out next year? So I put on pads for the first time at 19, won the job in training camp, played 3 years of Division III football as a kicker and a punter. I graduated, had a year of eligibility, went to NC State as a graduate transfer and played a year there. And then next thing I know, I'm playing NFL ball 4 years after I put on pads.
It's crazy. That is crazy. Talk a little bit about your journey and winning a Super Bowl in Seattle. I wasn't on the Broncos when you guys beat the Broncos and won a Super Bowl, but I know you're Super Bowl 48 champion with the Seahawks. Talk a little bit about what it was like being a Super Bowl winning kicker, and then also what it was like to play with like Pete Carroll. And then also, I know you and I are big fans. I think Ryan's also a big fan of Michael Gervais, and then all the mental performance techniques and what he talks about. So yes, first let's start with the journey with the Seahawks and being a Super Bowl winning kicker. What was that like?
Yeah, so I think the context here is important. So I bounced around a little bit early in my career with the Ravens, the Falcons, went to the UFL and played with the Las Vegas Locomotives, the original Vegas team. And then was signed by Denver, actually was there for like 4 games when Matt Prater was injured in 2010. Was signed by the Seahawks like right after. I was actually in training camp with the Broncos during the lockout, and then the Seahawks signed me at the end of the training camp. And when I got there, like everything just felt different. Like I walked in the doors and everything was like supportive. There was this belief that everyone was going to do well and that I was going to do well. And Coach Carroll just had this infectious enthusiasm that started like where it had already worn on all the players that were there. And like they talked different, like they were like hooting and hollering in team meetings. Coach Carroll was pointing out all the good things that guys were doing, like all the great plays, and encouraging people to do that rather than all the teams I'd been on in the past where they were pointing out all the mistakes we made. I started to believe that I was going to do well, and it just kind of it clicked for me there. It just kind of happened. And they actually brought in Mike Gervais my second year there, and I got to work with him one-on-one for like 6 years and learned tons of mental skills from him. He also helped shape the culture there with Pete. And so it was just this special energy too there with all my teammates were incredible guys on and off the field too. Like the types of guys that were there, Doug Baldwin, Richard Sherman, and Michael Bennett, Marshawn Lynch, Bobby Wagner. These guys are just like amazing people. And I got to battle it out on the field with these guys. We had like a close brotherhood there in a way that you wouldn't expect to, like the dorky kicker to be close with these guys. But, that it was just like a tight knit group. It was, in some ways a bunch of misfits, but we all got along and we were all driven to do something special. Coach Carroll knew how to like push our buttons in just the right way too. The front office did. They'd pull us along in just the right way with our contract situations and all that stuff. You know how that is. You can't see it when you're playing, but sometimes that extra motivation too can help you succeed on the field. And it kind of culminated. I mean, I think in 2012, we were smashing teams at the end of the season, like by 30, 40 points. Most people forget about it because we didn't win the Super Bowl that year. We lost to the Falcons. Well, the Ravens beat the Niners in the Super Bowl that year, but the Niners beat the Falcons right after we lost to the Falcons. And I think we were the best team in football that year, or at least the hottest team in football. Then the next year, we just came out with a chip on our shoulder, the entire team, and we just blasted through everybody. We had an incredible year, and we finally overcame the 49ers that year in the NFC Championship. And then it was just like we were on a high, and then just killed the Broncos that year. And then the next year, we lost to the Patriots in the Super Bowl in the final minute. So I really feel like we were the best team in football for 3 years there, and we came away with one. But it was, during the time, I mean, it felt like a dynasty, and it felt like every game was like a Thursday night or a Monday night game or a Sunday night game. It's like everything was always prime time for like 3 years there. The city loved it too, so it was cool to be part of the energy of all that.
Well, the primetime games on the West Coast, y'all kicking off at 5:30. So
yeah,
it's
that's true.
For everybody.
That's true.
So, I want to go back to one thing you mentioned, because this is one of those experiences in sports that I think a lot of people can relate to, and you kind of briefly touched on it. Kickers are often viewed as not football players or what have you. Now, I will contend that is drastically different in the NFL because we depend on you, right? Brandon McManus, the year we won the Super Bowl, scored the most points, more than Peyton Manning, right? But you still had to show up every day, and you weren't lifting the same weight that even receivers or defensive backs were lifting. You weren't, a lot of teams let you kickers run with the linemen. That's insane. Y'all should be up there at least with the tight ends. But how did you manage walking into a space every day where in many cases you looked physically different and your skills were drastically different? How did you still show up with confidence and be a teammate, although everything may have looked different to what you were seeing?
Yeah, it's one of the realities of playing football. And I think the fact that there's a kicker position that's so different from the rest of the game of football, I think, and there are some coaches and old school football people that think this way, that's like, that has no part in the game. Like, I don't like this guy because he plays that position. I could sense that there were certain people in the building that just, no matter what I did, they were never going to like me. And I was just like, whatever.
Got to be cut out.
Most people, I think, realize, it just is what it is. This is an important part of the game of football, arguably a top 5 most important position, to the outcome of the game. And they just accept that, and they embrace that, hey, it's basically like having a golfer or a soccer player on the team, but we need the guy because the game comes down to him. And, and I was a hard worker, disciplined, and, put in just as much, it wasn't always the same type of work, but put in just about everything I had. And so I think guys respected that. And then I was also I was humble and got along with all my teammates. I think my teammates saw my authentic side. So, they knew I was in it for the right reasons.
Steve, talk a little bit about your transition now in terms of what was it like? When did you know your time was up in the NFL? And then how did you start building your entrepreneurial career? I know you're speaking, you're coaching, you're consulting some NFL teams and working with some players and some other kickers. But talk to us a little bit about the transition and when did you know time was up, and how did you grasp that, and what was your transition like?
So COVID happened, then we had our second son, and the Bills drafted a kicker. That happened all in like a month and a half. So I get to training camp in Buffalo, and I was like kicking the ball, I thought, pretty decently. And their kicker, Tyler Bass, has a phenomenal leg, and he was hitting 65-yard field goals into the wind. And, I could barely make it from like 51 or 52 into the wind. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So that kind of was the first thing. And I got released at the end of training camp, and I was actually dealing with a nagging like back thing. And that whole year was kind of a mess. Like my whole, I was like very much a routine, steady guy with everything I was doing. And that whole off season got blown up. So I wasn't really where I wanted to be heading into the season. So then I got signed by Jacksonville. I was on the streets for like 4 weeks, kind of freaking out, like what's going on. Got signed by Jacksonville. I went and played in Jacksonville and had some injury issues there, really struggled in practice. And went and played in a game there and like probably shouldn't have even been playing in it, and missed a couple kicks, and went home to my family. And I missed my family the whole time I was there too, across the country. So got back and I was like, not really feeling it. I didn't feel like I had it in me mentally or physically at the time. And I never really thought that was going to be the path, but I guess COVID probably changed things for a lot of people. I thought I had a bunch of years left in me, but I didn't really want to be doing the free agent, traveling around the country, be away from my family for a couple of years, because my family was going to be staying here.
I totally understand that.
It was brutal though. Let's be honest. I mean, it's definitely the hard. Like, did you guys go out the way you wanted?
I was lucky. I was one of 5 players I know who called their own retirement, and I played for 10 years. And 2 of the others are DeMarcus Ware and Peyton Manning, right? So, I mean, It doesn't happen like that for a lot of people.
It doesn't.
I got hurt in 2020, rehabbed my shoulder, then got an opportunity to play in San Francisco. But I didn't even want to go to San Francisco, to be honest. I was just like, the injury did it, and then I hated playing during the COVID year. I mean, no fans in stands. It sucked. It was just awful. So, and then I was kind of like fed up. I didn't want to continue to keep moving and doing the free agent, like live out of the suitcase and make the team, and the politics. Yeah, I was over it.
It's crazy. Maybe we would have played a couple more years without the COVID thing. But
yeah,
sometimes I think the sting, it's been hard for me the last couple of years. Just I've been able to appreciate and have gratitude for like my career, because it did definitely put like a sour taste in my mouth at the end of it. In some ways, I feel like it might be easier, because some guys who go out on top, like I feel like it could be a real challenge for a guy like Tom Brady, who just like, has this epic career, kind of goes out, at least relatively on top, or even finishing on like a Super Bowl or something. It just kind of glorifies the whole thing. And the reality is you have to become a different person after football. And,
100%.
So it makes it harder to kind of hold on to that identity. You have to really work through some stuff to get to where you want to go.
Steve, as a kicker, you can help people understand an NFL locker room, I think, better than anyone, because you get to see us coming in and out of meetings. You're watching us during practice. So explain, like, what are some of the groups to people who don't know what football players are like? Like, what are the linemen like to people who've never played a sport? What are receivers like as you've seen them? Like, what do we look? Explain who we are to people who have never played.
The main thing I would say is everyone comes from different backgrounds. It's a beautiful collection of people from all over the country that look, talk, think, act differently. And, I loved seeing that, from where I grew up in Boston, and I don't know how to describe it, but that was one way of the world being. And, to see the rest of the country and to see everybody coming together and fighting for a common goal, that was one of the most beautiful experiences of the whole thing, was getting to really know people from different backgrounds. That, like, when I look back at playing football, like, that's one of the things I'm most appreciative of, getting to understand different people's perspectives and getting to connect like on a really deep level with people that I wouldn't have without football.
I'd love to know what's your favorite Marshawn Lynch story.
Oh man,
that you can share.
I was gonna say he just went through 2 of them that he can't talk about. Yeah.
I love the guy because he's himself. He doesn't care what anybody thinks. There was a game that I had a rough game against Arizona, and he comes over, like I've got my head down, and I'm on the bench, and he comes over, and he puts his arm around me, and he's literally giving me Skittles, and he's got his hat on, but in his hat, he's got like music playing in it, and it's some song from like Oakland that I don't even know. It's like some Oakland rap that I've never heard before, but it's like his favorite song. And he puts his arm around me. He's like blasting in my ear and like pulling me back and forth, like waking me up and get me back going. Man, the guy, he just had this infectious energy about him. And I really like that guy. We saw him at the 10-year reunion for our Super Bowl, and we chatted a lot. And I know there's some deep connections there. I can't really fully explain it, but he's a good buddy.
He's the only person that I've ever known in the NFL now to listen to music on the sidelines. That's not usually allowed.
Yeah, there was one other thing I think he was doing that was not allowed to, but I didn't want to mention it.
Yeah, that's all we have to say about that. Yeah. When you look at what made you successful, Steve, what are the things that you think that have also helped you be successful in your second career? What are the key things about performance that are true across whatever you decide to do?
I'm going to phrase it this way. One of the biggest challenges coming out of playing football has been figuring out what I want to do. Juggling all these different ideas has made it hard to be like super clear about what I want to do. But it's been part of that process to try these different things out. When I was playing football, this like intense clarity around what I'm doing, and then everything it takes to do that, and going into the details and the discipline around that really helped me become great, and like sinking my teeth into all that. Having like this awareness of what you're good at and what you need to improve on, and then finding resources to help you get better at things that's kind of the most important thing in my mind, is like that awareness of what you're doing well and to like keep doing that, what you need to improve on, and finding resources to do that, and kind of that ability to move in the direction that you want to move in, and being resourceful is to me the most important thing.
Well, Steve, man, really appreciate you joining us on the Gridiron and Growth podcast, man. It's incredible to hear some of your stories, the way you've approached life during your football career and then life after football, man. It's truly inspiration, man, and looking forward to continuing to get to know you more and having future conversations. So really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Gridiron and Growth with your co-host, Ryan Harris, and myself. Big shout out to Big Up Studios and Streamline Media for all their help with everything that we do. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. Please leave a review, and please send us any questions at the gridiron and growth pod@gmail.com.